Okay, we are recording. Adam, always good to see you. Thanks
See you
again
too.
for your time here. The president over the weekend extended the time for social distancing and being what they say is in lockdown for the next 30 days until April 30th. So I take it Arlington is going to go along with that, correct? At the very least.
So, yeah, I mean, right now we're still operating under the governor's school closure till May 4th, and the governor's stay-at-home advisory until April 7th. But the reality is, from all the data we're looking at, what all the experts are saying, we're likely to go to April 30th or far beyond that to be able to flatten the curve like we're all trying to do. So I think we'll be talking about this week whether or not we want to make any announcements of our own, or if we want to wait for the state to make further announcements about a continuance of the stay-at-home advisory. But I think the reality is that this is going to take quite a bit longer than maybe some of us initially thought.
Now, the select board last week basically declared a state of emergency to parallel what Governor Baker said. What does Arlington reap as far as some help coming the town's way?
So for the time being, we know that we will more than likely receive 75% reimbursement for all expenditures made in response to the pandemic. That's the normal disaster or emergency reimbursement program that FEMA has in place. So we're tracking all of our expenses from Health and Human Services to police, fire, DPW facilities, and we'll eventually submit that to the federal government and likely receive 75% of our expenditures in reimbursement. Beyond that, we plan on learning more today, tomorrow, this week on what exactly is contained within the stimulus bill. I think there's a chance there could be more benefits for local governments to be able to receive some funding to support their efforts in responding to the pandemic as part of the stimulus bill. And I know the state has also put some money out. We received $17,000 from the state when Governor Baker released $5 million last week or the week before, specifically for local boards of health. So there'll be various pockets of money that the the emergency declaration will allow us to have access to.
There was a very sobering statement made over the weekend. This was in the Globe by a Mass General doctor who basically said that Massachusetts is going to be pretty much like New York in about the next week or so. Now, I know you've been in touch with a lot of health officials. What are you hearing?
So I'm hearing that it's too early to tell. I was on a call yesterday with a number of mayors and managers and other local officials across the region on Sunday afternoon, led by Mayors Joe Curtatone and Mayor Driscoll from Somerville and Salem, respectively. And we had an expert on who, looking at the data, basically said we're 1 week away from being able to tell whether or not the stay-at-home advisory, the closures, the social distancing that we've implemented in the state has been successful or not. So this particular expert was not committed to saying that we are not, that we are going to have our hospitals overwhelmed. He was also not committing to saying that we were successful because it just hasn't been enough time yet. He says you need 3 to maybe even 4 weeks to know whether or not the measures you've put in place will be successful or not. And we're coming into the 3rd week, so we need about another week plus before we know whether or not the efforts will be successful.
Right. Now, I've seen in the Arlington list, some people are saying that a lot of parks are closed. Mount Auburn Cemetery, is that closed to casual walkers as well? What have you heard?
Mount Auburn in Cambridge?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure.
All right. And any other cemeteries, let's say in Arlington, as far as casual walkers, or is it pretty much business as usual?
So we haven't closed the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. But today we're going to talk about the Minuteman Bike Path. We're going to, now that you've mentioned it, we'll probably talk about the cemetery. I mean, I think we all hate to limit people's ability to get some outdoor activity and stay healthy during this time, but we continue to receive reports, especially people on the bike path, congregating, walking far too close, spending far too much time close to one another from a physical point of view. So we're going to have to take a look at whether or not we have to put tighter restrictions in place on the use of various outdoor assets.
So basically what you're saying is you're still hearing about the congregating at the pathway, even with the signs up. The signs have been up now for almost 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah. We over the weekend, I received a number of emails. The Board of Health received a number of emails from people expressing concern about the behavior they're seeing on the bike path.
All right. Now, the Arlington High School project seems to be going as smoothly as possible, given the extraordinary conditions. I understand there's about $5 million freed up because of the geothermal wells they were going to put in to circulate the water. Apparently, that's not going to happen. What's the latest on that?
So very unfortunately, when they started digging the test wells, they discovered that there were more contaminants, or at least contaminants in places where we previously did not believe there were contaminants from previous contamination from years and years ago when there were various industrial uses on the site.
Hmm.
And that, unfortunately, complicated the ability for us to be able to install geothermal wells. So after a great deal of analysis, but done by the licensed site provider, a licensed site professional that's hired through our architect, their advice was the most, or the safest route for us was to not go forward with geothermal wells. What that means, it does mean that the cost of the geothermal wells will not be part of the project, but there does need to be a redesign to be able to put what's called variable refrigerant flow, a VRF system, into the wings that were going to be powered or cooled or heated by the geothermal wells. So it's not a total cost savings. There will be some costs associated with that design change.
Sure.
And we hope in the next several weeks the building committee will get a clearer picture on exactly what those costs are. I think the good news is, and this is very important to understand, we're still going to maintain the building as an all-electric building so that there's no natural gas connected to the building for heating or cooling. So from a sustainability point of view, we're still going to be able to do our best to maintain near a net zero building.
All right. And staying with the school, some parents are getting a little restless as far as distance learning is concerned with their children, the students in Arlington. What's the latest on that as far as the schools getting that material out so the students can pretty much finish the school year as best they can under these conditions?
So I know that last week the school department arranged for over 400 Chromebooks to go home with families. I know the week before that they were sending home educational packets to certain elementary students or certain elementary classes. Beyond that, I would have to defer to the school superintendent and school department. I know they're challenged with some state laws around exactly what they can provide to certain students or not to provide other students, but I know they're working hard. They're trying to figure out the right path forward, but for the details, I would have to defer to the superintendent.
All right, and to keep morale up among the residents of Arlington, you have this new program, 6 Feet at 6. Can you expound on that a little bit? I've read a little bit about it, but what is its purpose, and what are you hearing as far as feedback?
So this was the idea of people coming out on their front porches we heard about happening in Wisconsin, and we tasked Kelly Linema of our planning department and Adam Karowski of the IT department to try to take that idea and see what we could do around Arlington, and they came up with 6 Feet at 6 p.m., which we all just thought was brilliant. Mm-hmm. And over the first couple of days, I've been seeing it on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook, so I haven't seen it, but it seems like it's been quite popular. I've seen lots of pictures of people coming out to their porches or to their curbside and their neighbors staying on their curbside, but talking, socializing, and it seems like it's been, in the midst of these scary, uncertain times, a nice way for people to connect in a safe manner.
And what are you hearing from the residents as far as just keeping inside? We have to keep on keeping on here. We have to be tough. Everyone's doing the best they possibly can. I think a lot of people have reached the point now where they're just getting restless and it's been exacerbated by the spring, of course, coming after a long winter. But what advice would you like to give Arlington residents as far as hanging in there?
I guess the best I can say is we're all in this together. We're all going through the same thing. People are in their homes, they're balancing work responsibilities, home responsibilities, whatever other stresses they have in their life. If you can safely get outside, it is okay to get outside. It is okay to go for a walk. But really embracing that physical distancing or that social distancing is important to continue to flatten the curve. And, this is an interesting effort on all of our parts, right? Across the whole world, that we are working hard. We're working hard, not doing much, but working hard to see that nothing happens. Mm-hmm. So if we're successful, it will mean things don't happen. So it's a hard concept, right, for us to think about. We're not all doing this for something to then happen for us to see. Mm-hmm. We're all doing this so something doesn't happen. And it's gonna be hard for us to be able to see success and to measure success. But there is not an expert in the world that's not saying that these efforts are critical to saving lives. So for everybody in Arlington, I would say, please keep it up. I think the vast, vast majority of Arlington residents are adhering to these guidelines. The few times that I've been out going back and forth to the office, this town, for better or worse, is a ghost town. There's parking everywhere on the streets. People aren't out, and that tells me people are adhering to the guidance. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's listening up and doing their part.
Well, we're getting there. And Adam, thanks again for your time. I know you're very busy during these times, especially, and you stay safe.
You too. Thank you, Jeff.
Take care.